Budaya Dhamma family, and today again we are dedicating this sharing tonight to Sister Junia's late mother, Brother Hasono's late mother-in-law in Jakarta. They are both Kayana Mittas and very strong supporters of the Buddha Sasana. We will be showing a slide in her memory at the end of this. But tonight, please allow me to share my screen so that we can proceed. Yeah, all right. Now, the topic tonight is, of course, the very simple fact that while we may all learn the Buddhist teachings, if we do not put it into practice, then honestly, we are no different from someone who is completely ignorant of the Buddhist teachings. So this is a beautiful slide that I would like to share with you all. To know and not to do is not yet to know. And I think that by now, most of us can understand this, that Buddhist teachings, which we call the Buddha Dhamma, is basically the realities of life. And these are the things of life that are there. That is what it is, whether we like it or we do not like it. And its knowledge and application is basically like riding on this boat for us to cross from one end of the river to the other end of the river, from one bank to the other bank. That body of knowledge is quite useless if we do not apply it. And very often we find in many temples, in many centers, a nice, very beautiful cupboard in which is kept the entire collection of Sutta Vinaya. And if you look very carefully, the last time anybody opened the cupboard was so long ago that nobody even knows when. And a lot of people actually pray to the cupboard instead of using the knowledge that is in the cupboard. And that is, of course, not going to be very useful. Now, again, if I were to ask you, very interesting question. If I were to ask every one of the audience now listening in, who gave birth to the Buddha? I think that the vast majority of us would answer Queen Maya. Now, unfortunately, that would be a wrong answer, because Queen Maya gave birth to Siddhartha Gautama. It is wisdom that gave birth to the Buddha. Reflect on these words. It is Siddhartha Gautama who was born from Queen Maya. What gave birth to the Buddha is actually wisdom. And that's why it is often said that Prajna, or the highest wisdom, is the mother of all Buddhas, because all Buddhas became Buddhas because of their wisdom, because of their discovery of the Dhamma. So I think that this is something important for us to realize, that if indeed we are to change for the better, it is again not our knowledge of the Dhamma, but our application of the Dhamma in our daily lives. That is what is important. Our knowledge by itself may not do anything good if we do not apply it. And this is from the last chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutta. And it says, O bhikshus and the wise, just as a goldsmith tests his gold by burning, cutting, and rubbing it, so you must examine my words and accept them, but not merely out of reverence. You know, when you bring in gold to the jeweler, the more high-tech jeweler will actually rub it on a little machine, and that machine will analyze the purity of the gold. The not so high-end ones will have other means of trying to see the purity of gold. But whatever it is, a jeweler will not take your word for it, and he will test it to see the purity of the gold. Now, the Buddha himself had told us that whatever we are told is his teachings. Don't just accept it, but look around and see, is it true? Look within and see, is it true? And our looking directly is ehipasiko, experiencing it by ourselves, for ourselves. And then when you find these to be true, then only we will accept them. And not because somebody said, it is the words of the Buddha. And whatever the teaching is, from whichever lineage or whichever tradition, if you test it and ask yourself the questions that the Buddha gave us as guidelines, is it good for you? Is it good for other people? Is it praised by the wise? Will it lead to a wholesome outcome? Will it lead to solitude? Will it lead to peace, calmness, etc.? Now, when you look at all this yourself, you can see whether that teaching is consistent with the body of teachings of the Buddha. And these teachings are everywhere around us. If we just bother to look, it is not some exotic teaching hidden in a cave somewhere, but the teachings are actually very real and are seen all around us in nature. So it is not some really exotic things. It is actually everything that is around us, within us, that is the Dhamma of the Buddha. I want you to see this clip.
How do you describe Dharma? What does Dharma mean to you?
According to my understanding, what Dharma is, to do whatever you do, very practically, skillfully, for benefit of the all beings, without causing any harm, and for their well-being, including oneself and all, is Dharma. धर्म न हिंदू बौद्ध हो, सिख इस्लाम न जैन, धर्म चित्त को शुद्धता, धर्म शांति सुख चैन. Dharma means the purity of heart. Dharma means peace. And Dharma means well-being of all human society.
I think it's important, as is explained by the Venerable here, that when we talk of the word Dhamma, of course here we use the word Buddha Dhamma to refer it as the teachings of the Buddha. But please remember, Dhamma is neither Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Muslim, Jain. Dhamma is simply the realities of life. And realities of life does not belong to anybody. And the Buddha did not invent the Dhamma. He merely discovered it, just as you and I discover things. And the Dhamma is there, even if there is no Buddha. It is whether a Buddha has brought it to the awareness of us human beings or not. Even with or without the presence of the Buddha. When we say, oh, the Buddha Sasana has ended, the Dhamma is still there, because these are the realities of all conditioned existence. And these realities are even there to be discovered by a scientist. As to what depth that scientist can discover it will depend on the insight of that scientist. And many of the discoveries of scientists are actually very, very consistent with what the Buddha teaches as the Dhamma. Now, family members in this big Dhamma family. You know, when the early translators first translated the teachings of the Buddha to English, they use words which, of course, they are familiar with, and of course, which is in their background, their cultural, their religious background. For example, when we talk of the Four Noble Truths, they were translated by the early translators like Professor Rice Davies, Mrs. Ivy Horner, etc. Great people. And they were translated as truths, Four Noble Truths, first, second, third, fourth truth. Now, that was the closest to their cultural background and academic understanding, and so they chose the word truth. Satcha, S-A-C-C-A. However, when we translate it to English, the word truth has a certain cultural baggage. It immediately gives rise to something that we think, this great truth is hidden in the bottom of the sea, or this great truth is in the top of a mountain, or in a cave somewhere, or in a secret Pandora box somewhere. It gives that cultural impression of some exotic things. But in reality, when you look at the word satcha, satcha means real. What is real? Now, we all live in illusion and the appearance of things. We all live with that because that's our perception of how things are. So, for example, when we see a car, we see a car. We do not see it as an instrument that is made up of probably 100,000 components that is joined together to make that car. And similarly, when we see a human being, we see, that's Brother Key there. We do not see what makes Brother Key, the composition or the khandas that have come together to make Brother Key. And even more, which is misleading, is we all tend to see things as permanent, as separate. And hence, we all live within this illusion. We all live within this distorted perception and how things appear to our perception. Now, of course, there is a reality. And the reality is what the Buddha taught us about, that things are impermanent, that things are composite, that things, because of its impermanent nature, are unstable, unreliable, and not self. But we see the opposite. But this is actually reality. All the four so-called truths are actually expressions of the reality that we all live in and the reality that we are. We are actually that reality. There is actually a brother in KL who gets very upset whenever I use the word truth because he thinks it's a gross mistranslation. But nevertheless, I think that it is probably the best in the 19th and early 20th century that the early translators could come up with. So the Pali is Satcha, the Sanskrit is Satya. They both mean the same. All right. Now, if you look at the Sanskrit Satya, it is loosely translated as truth or essence. But this is what is important. It refers to a virtue in Indian religions, referring to being truthful in one's thought, speech, and actions. All right. What do we see? What do we do? What is around us? Do not be misled by illusions. Do not be misled by our distorted perception. But what is the reality behind our perception? And that is what the Buddha is teaching us. What is the reality behind this perception? So the Buddha Dharma is basically an education for our transformation. That education is for us to learn these realities, the satya or the satya. And when we understand this reality, to apply it in our lives so that our lives will change. For example, we have less dukkha because now we understand the cause of dukkha. So if I have to use back the original translations, I'm stuck with the word truths. And the brother in KL, please forgive me, because this is the closest English word that we can find. Now, these realities that the Buddha teaches is self-evident. And the Buddha wants us to look at it in all three aspects. We have to see it for ourselves after we learn it from him. We have to verify it by ourselves before we become accepting of it. So we first learn, then we verify, and then we realize that it is the truth, that it is real. It is the reality behind our illusions. So first and foremost, this education, just as we study mathematics or physics, nobody ever calls physics a religion. It is just a body of knowledge. And nobody ever asks you to take a leap of faith when you study mathematics or study physics. There is no leap of faith. In mathematics, we prove that this equation is equal to that equation. In physics, we use experiments to prove that the Newtonian laws are correct, for example. So I think that it is very important for every one of us here to realize that our very first walk in this path to educate ourselves demands that we firstly do not commit any intellectual suicide. Please, Dhamma brothers and sisters, as we walk this path together, please do not commit intellectual suicide. In fact, we need every ounce of your intellect to understand what the Buddha was trying to teach us. So the 5 basic precepts that we undertook just now, led by Brother Bobby, none of the precepts have anything to do with religion. They are all morally sound things that any decent human being will want to train in. So first and foremost, it is a journey of self-study guided by these streetlights, these lampposts. Now, how do you recognize that these are realities? Well, realities stare at us right in our faces all around. I often tell Dhamma family members, I attend far more funerals than I attend weddings. I'm sure for many of you, that is also the truth. And every time I attend a funeral, truth or reality is staring at me right in my face. The reality of anicca, dukkha, anatta, of instability, impermanence, ceaseless change, unreliability, disappointment, and of course, not self. The first noble truth stares at my face, and etc. So whether you choose to live in denial and see reality is up to us. So these realities is what we call truth. It's universal. It is unchanged by locality or culture or nation. Wherever you may be on earth or in the space, a person will still fall sick, a person will still die. That is an impersonal fact of life. It doesn't favor anyone. It doesn't mean that you can pray and alter it. It doesn't mean you can believe in something and alter it. Its outcome is objective and inevitable. So the Buddha insisted, please people, do not believe just because someone told you. Do not believe just because some book purportedly says it. Do not believe just because some very suave preacher tells you. But look around you. Look at reality yourself. Whether you believe in the Buddha or not is actually immaterial. Whether we even call ourselves Buddhist or not is also immaterial. Because whether you call yourself a Buddhist or not, whether you call yourself of any religion, the same realities are common and apply to you and me and everyone. So now the Buddha would not have become the Buddha if not for wisdom. Remember, I asked you earlier, who is the mother of the Buddha? And those who answered Queen Maya are wrong. Queen Maya is the mother of Siddhartha Gautama. The mother of the Buddha is wisdom. Remember, the Buddha is not a person, but a title, someone who has attained supreme awakening. It is not a personal name. And what makes a person, a Buddha, a supremely enlightened being, is because of him seeing the realities of life, the Dhamma, and using it, applying it with great meticulous, day by day, moment by moment application, his wisdom. So while we took refuge just now, led by Brother Bobby in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, we have to remember that the ultimate refuge is actually the realities of life, because it is the Dhamma, the realities of life, which made the Buddha a Buddha. And the Sangha are the people who are keeping this body of knowledge alive. So we take refuge ultimately in the Dhamma, in this body of realities. Now, another very important point that I wish to bring to our awareness, that you can pray and pray and pray to all the gods and the devas and anything that you think will help you, but that god or deva is not going to make you a god or a deva. Now, you do not even need to pray to the Buddha. You do not need to worship the Buddha. And if you do not like puja, you did not even do puja, but you can still become a Buddha because you have the body of knowledge, the wisdom. The Buddha himself did not do any puja. Who did he do puja to? But because of his knowledge, because of his wisdom, because of his knowing of the realities, he became the Buddha. So you can become a Buddha, no matter whether you pray or you don't pray. Now, human beings will create gods for every need, because human beings need the opiate to carry on. So the Chinese have gods for everything, you name it. And like the Greeks, these gods are very human in their nature. Like the Greeks, they have gods for everything, for medicine, for commerce. The Chinese similarly have gods of wealth, studies, justice, and man created gods by the thousands, not the other way around. So the Chinese word for Dhamma, Fa, 3 drops of water flowing out. When you see the realities of life, you go in harmony with it. That is wise, that is logical. So when a sister falls sick with a not so nice disease, for example, like cancer, she does not go around saying, oh, why me, why me, why me? The reality is, why not you? As long as you are a human, you will have anicca, dukkha, anatta. And she does not go around praying and praying and praying that I will be cured, I will be cured, a miracle will happen. I will drink this water, I will do that, I will participate in this ritual. No, that would be silly. When she knows these realities of life, she goes along in harmony with it. And in the 21st century, the most logical thing is to get modern medical treatment to treat the disease that she has. So the Buddha Dharma teaches us to be very practical. Blind faith is in anything external. Now, wisdom is internal, and wisdom is not blind faith. In fact, blind faith is condemned in the Buddha's teachings. So what is obviously true? Well, as I said, all you got to do is look around you and you see anicca, impermanence. People fall sick. People die, cars break down, computers get corrupted. Nothing remains the same because they are all compound or composite things. But we expect things to be permanent. And when you have this illusion or delusion that even you are permanent, then when something goes wrong, you're going to be very, very badly disappointed. The glass that you hold is already broken. But impermanence has many good things. And it is because things are impermanent that the person sick with cancer can seek a cure. That the person who is not so nice can become better. If we are permanent, well, then there will be no hope, isn't it? With anything impermanent, it is unreliable, it is unstable, and that will give rise to dukkha, or dissatisfaction. Now, technically speaking, anything that you and I do can give rise to dukkha, because we will demand this, we will expect this. So whatever you do, dear Dhamma family, please make sure that your suffering, your dukkha, your emotional investment is worth the suffering. For example, a very close and dear brother flew to Australia to see his children. Poor man got to get his nose ducked a few times, had to travel literally up and down the country before he could fly to Australia. And then in Australia, he's stuck in a hotel for 14 days with his nose ducked another few more times. But it is all to him worth it, because the suffering is worth the suffering. The dukkha is worth the dukkha. When we study, for example, of course, you're going to invest long hours into the night, a lot of sacrifices to study, but that dukkha is worth the dukkha. When you want to improve ourselves, similarly. But if you do activities in which the dukkha is not worth the dukkha, then you are a very foolish person. So suffering or dukkha, which leads to the end of suffering, is what we must pursue. Not self is the third of the three characteristics, because of anicca, because of dukkha, because we are all composite things, because we are all a big flowing mass of energies, constantly, ceaselessly transforming. There is no core, no permanent self. If you think there is, you're going to be disappointed. I do not look like how I looked 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. In fact, if I show you a picture of how I looked 30 years ago, you may not even recognize me. So that is clear evidence, that is empirical evidence that I am ceaselessly changing. So if I demand, I insist that I must have a lot of hair, that it must be black as charcoal, I'm going to be very disappointed. But instead, I can rejoice that not many people have the great privilege of no hair and it being all white. So, dear Dhamma family, I am going to skip a few things because that had already been taught or discussed or shared in previous talks. So let us realize that we must first and foremost have the confidence in ourselves that we can, because of anicca, because of impermanence, change to be better. The Buddha does not need us to pray to him, or to worship him, or to seek his forgiveness. I think this concept is something very important, okay? That power to change is actually within us, not outside of us. And the Buddha wants us to lead a noble life, be an Arya, in harmony with the truths of life, the Dhamma. The Eightfold Path is really the way in which we can have harmonious living with ourselves, with our family, and with the others around us. So if we live our lives guided by the Noble Eightfold Path, we live in harmony. Now, emptiness or Kong is the realization that nothing has a permanent, substantial, or independent existence. Everything is dependently originated. Since nothing is fixed or static, there is now infinite potentiality. This alone makes it possible for life in all its multiplicity to arise. I purposely chose these words because this sounds almost like a physics lesson. And it is indeed that because of the nature of emptiness, things can transform from one state to another state. And that is what we see in the world around us. The Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh used to teach, a cloud never dies. You see a cloud and you think, oh, that cloud has disappeared. But no, that cloud has not disappeared. It has merely changed into rain, into water, into stream, into river, into vegetables, into us, into so many million compounds that has hydrogen and oxygen. So we are just ceaselessly changing. When a person dies, we see it as a person dies. The funeral service, I would say, he is in transit because he too is undergoing change into another form, another state. So whether you choose to look at Buddhism with the ISM at the back as a religion, a philosophy, or a way of life is really unimportant. What is more important is when you study this Buddha Dharma, does it lead to less and less suffering? Does it make you more and more happy? Because when you apply the Buddha's teachings, then you know the teachings. If you know the teachings, but do not apply the teaching, it is like knowing, yes, that's a boat, but you never actually step foot on the boat and you never actually cross the river. So when you apply the teachings, that application will lead to less suffering and ultimately the third noble truth, freedom from greed, freedom from anger, and freedom from delusion. So please remember, dear Dhamma family, as we apply that Dhamma, you will be free. You should be happier day by day. Every day, a sister who is sick will still be happy, if not happier, because she knows the realities of life. These are the realities which are all around us. You do not need to deny it. We just need to see it, accept it, and live like water flowing around rocks. The word fa. Water going out. 3 drops of water and chu chi, the chu. So the actuation of the Dhamma manifests as metta, compassion, joy, peace, and wisdom in our daily lives. So when we apply the Dhamma, then we will have metta. This will be our expression. We see things with compassion, and we have joy, peace, in whatever time and circumstances we may be in. Applying this wisdom. It also gives you the strength, give us the strength to do things selflessly with understanding or empathy. For with wisdom, we no longer see so much of that separation between me and you and the rest of the world. And we see less as, what do I get out of it? You know, for a lot of people, whenever you ask them to do anything, it is, what do I get out of it? If I do not get anything out of it, I don't want to do it. Now, as you apply this, that attitude changes. Less and less of the I. This delusion of I will become smaller and smaller and smaller. Of course, we do not expect it to disappear overnight. This I delusion is the main cause of human suffering. This illusion of separateness is the main cause of greed, anger, delusion, of people cheating each other, lying to each other, doing all kinds of terrible things. This will not disappear overnight. It takes a long time before we can actually understand and have direct insight into the delusion of a separate I. Now, remember, the Dhamma is like a menu. It can never be food. Similarly, knowing the Dhamma but not living it, not applying it, is like looking at the menu but not eating any food. The Dhamma brother who has gone to Australia is now stuck in quarantine in a hotel. Very expensive. 3 meals provided. And every day he will send us the pictures of the food that he is fed with. So every day we look at it and we see it and we ask him, what is this? What is this funny looking thing? Oh, fettuccine. Oh, what is that funny looking thing? Oh, something else. But can those of us in Malaysia eat any of that food? We can't, because we are just looking at it. So similarly, dear Dhamma family, the Buddhist teachings are like that. When we share, we see, this is beautiful. Whoa. But the point is, we have to use it. We have to apply it. We have to eat it. If not, it is just like me looking at the pictures that the dear brother sends to us every day. So, dear Dhamma family, the Buddha Dhamma or Buddhism with the ISM does not aim to convert anybody to anything. We only hope that people can become noble, better. Okay? Apologize for the spelling error here. Lead a better life and have less suffering, more happiness. But whenever the Dhamma is lived, people will be more happy because the cause of dukkha or suffering or dissatisfaction is lessened. Now remember, karma means action. Karma means our intentional action. So I think that this is one of the basic applications when we study the Buddha Dhamma. All our intentions, we look at it mindfully and we see, is it a good intention? All right. And this is a paradigm shift in thinking, because before this, you will just act. And we often hear the word or the expression, it is not a crime if you are not caught. But here in the Buddha Dhamma, what is your intention? Because that intention will give rise to a habitual tendency. That habitual tendency will give rise to a thought pattern. And that thought pattern will become your personality. So karma is not fate by any means. Karma is not predestination. We are changing our future at every moment. We are changing our next hour, next week, next month, next year, next life by what we are doing at every moment. In all the things that we do, when we look at it, we look at the intention of why we do it, and you will see we are actually creating a little stem, making our habitual tendency, which becomes our personality, which becomes the way in which our mind is going to work. We create our own heaven. We create our own hell by such repeated actions. So the mind, the Buddha had always taught, is the starting point of it all. Whether body, speech, and mind is the starting point of it all. No rites, no rituals, no sacrifices will ever change this. The only thing that will change this is our mindful looking at ourselves behind why we do things and then changing it such that we try to do whatever we do with wholesome intention instead of those actions based on greed, anger, and delusion. So please remember that both wholesome and unwholesome mind states will create this imprint, this personality. All right, and these, whether wholesome or unwholesome, are powerful driving forces that makes us us, that makes our personality our personality. So now, sometimes people are asked, oh, it's like a bank account, is it? And we say, no, the bank account is actually not right, because it's not just a matter of positives or negatives, and you can't cancel one out with the other. The garden metaphor is better, because every time we do something, we are planting all kinds of vegetables, flowers, weeds, etc. Every day we are planting them. So whether that garden ultimately is filled with beautiful flowers or filled with completely weeds and thorns is up to us, because we are the ones, the farmer planting the seeds. But they will both be there. All kinds of plants will be there. Some will ripen very fast, some will take a long time. But whatever we do, we are planting seeds. And when we plant a lot of beautiful flowers, then less and less of the seeds that become weeds may come into fruition. When we plant a lot of beautiful fruits, then more and more of the fruits will come to fruition. Some take long time, some take shorter time. But whatever it is, every day we are planting seeds. And of course, the conditions are important, because whatever we plant, cause can only come to fruition with the right conditions. So let us all make sure that this garden that we are planting by our actions, by our putting into practice, putting into our daily lives the teachings of the Buddha. Everything we do, we are planting seeds. Let's hope this garden is a beautiful garden of flowers, fruit trees, and beautiful things, beautiful veggies, instead of full of thorns and weeds. Now, even a small seed can have huge consequence. Please remember, even the biggest tree came from a tiny little sapling. For example, if we broke the precept that Brother Bobby led us just now, and let's say we just get drunk a bit, and then we drove a car and killed somebody. The intention to drink alcohol might sound benign, but it has actually led to a chain of events, much of which we cannot predict, including devastating a family, robbing someone of a father or a mother. So the consequences are beyond our ability as human beings to predict. So let us make sure we keep to the wholesome. Similarly, when we do wholesome things, dear Dhamma family, you also cannot predict the outcome. That outcome can similarly become huge, even though that wholesome act might seem like a tiny little thing when you first started doing it. So avoiding the starting point is a fundamental thing. Let's make sure that that starting point, if it is unwholesome, is avoided. And that starting point, if it is wholesome, is done. That is called right effort. Right effort. Try to keep on planting good seeds. Don't just read about the seed and keep that seed in the storeroom. That is when we know the Dhamma and do nothing. We have to take that seed and plant it, which means, please, Dhamma family, we need to do things. Whether it is so simple as just offering food to your neighbor, or just saying good morning to the man who sweeps the floor, or just saying hello to the auntie who is unappreciated because she is so-called a cleaner, or a foreign laborer who is here just opening and closing the gate. Just a smile. Even that is already making someone else's life better. So what are you going to dream about tonight, Sister Hui Shan? What are you going to dream about tonight, Brother Leong? Do you know? Well, you're not going to be able to predict with 100% accuracy what you are going to dream about tonight. But what we plan in our mind may do that. That is why, for example, Hui San may be very scared to watch horror movies. Because she says, if I watch horror movies, oh, I might have a nightmare tonight. Why do you think you will have a nightmare tonight if you watch a horror movie now? Because you had planted that into your mind stream. So similarly, our next us as in us, next hour, next moment, next year, next life, is dependent on what we planned previously today, tomorrow, every day. The new becoming is like that dream that we will create, except it is now not a dream anymore. So be very careful because it goes both ways. The potential goes both ways, dear Dhamma family. So let us plant our seeds, practice. And when we say practice, as a lay person, is basically dana, sila, bhavana. Dana, generosity, not just of money or material things, but a smile, a greeting, a good morning. Something so simple. Just waving to the security guard as you pass, letting him know you acknowledge him as a person, saying thank you to the Grab driver who sends you food, maybe giving him a tip, etc. And of course, your skill, your time, your knowledge. Sila, for us, just the 5 basic precepts. All right, 5 guide posts, 5 street lights, 5 traffic lights. Bhavana. For us, if you want to be a Sotapan, to be a Bhavana basically is to be a Sravaka, someone who listens. Someone who listens. Well, of course, in the 21st century, beyond listening, you also got your web page, your website, and so many things online that we can see to get you knowledge so that you can apply back this knowledge. Now, the wise person is not afraid of the fruits that he is experiencing today. All right? The wise man is not afraid of the guo, but he is very afraid of the yin. The foolish man is very afraid of the guo. That means whatever unpleasant, under inverted comma, that he faces today, he doesn't want it. He's very afraid of it. But a wise man is not afraid of the unpleasant guo. He is very, very meticulous about the yin or the seed that he is planting today in response to this guo. Because he knows that whether the guo today is sweet, bitter, neutral, sour, whatever he does in response to it will create the future guo. Understand? Do not be afraid of the guo, but be very afraid of the yin, of the cause that you are going to plant today. Basically, Dhammapada 182, avoid all evil, cultivate good, cleanse one mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhists. So, with that, I want to show you my students. I give them the gift of education, the gift of knowledge. I try my best to teach them. I give them my time, my metta, my attention. But whether they actually finally study is beyond me. Whether they actually finally put it to use is beyond what I can do. Finally, it's up to them whether they want to do good, whether they want to apply whatever I've been trying to teach them. It is beyond me. So similarly, the Buddha has given us the greatest gift of all, the gift of the Dhamma. He has given us 45 years of his life, his unconditional metta, his attention. But whether we actually want to do anything, or we just listen and do nothing, It's up to us.
बेटा मेरी छड़ी उठा दो। जी माँ, थैंक यू।
So Dhamma family members, in all these things, it is important that we get off our butts and do it ourselves, because only we can help ourselves. The Buddha can only show us the way. And this is one of my favorite.
代替不来。请问什么是禅学的大义？
我很想告诉你，但是我现在要去拉尿。想想看，像这种小事也要我亲自去拉才行啊。请问你能不能代替我去呢？
This is one of my favorite Chan teachings, dear Dhamma family. In this teaching for the non-Chinese speaking audience, a man came and asked the great master, "Oh, tell me, what is a high teaching or a high principle in Chan?" And the master said, "I want to tell you, oh wait, I need to go pee." And then, of course, to be more dramatic, it will show him walking away to pee and then stopping and turning around and then asking the man, even something so simple as going to pee, I have to do myself. Can you do it for me? The lesson in here is that, yes, while we all want shortcuts, we want to be asked and be given. We want to knock and be open. The reality is, or you must use truth. But the real situation is, you want it, you have to do it yourself. Because if the master is to just tell it to him direct in his face, it will again be just like another fact entering the left ear and leaving the right ear. Or me talking to my students till I go blur and mouth also dry. And yet the horse does not drink water. It's the same. We have to do it ourselves. We have to walk the graduated path. Dana, Sila, Bhavana. We have to plant the seeds ourselves. The master cannot do it for us. And here I just want to show something that some of you might be quite familiar with, as we all live in East Asia. If you enter many Mahayana temples, you will see such an image of the Bodhisattva, Kuan Yin. There's a beautiful one in Kwong San in Singapore. Huge one, beautiful like this. And you will see on top of her head are many, many heads. Typically, there'll be 10 more heads, or a total of 10 heads. Of course, with the Buddha right at the very top. But among the many heads, if you even go to look at the one in Kwong San, you will see that one of the heads will show an image of an angry or fearful person. All right, like for example, here. Do look out for it the next time you are in any Mahayana temple, and you will see this. And the reason I'm taught as to why there is typically one head which is depicted as a fierce looking or angry looking sculpture is because in many things in life, We need that for our discipline. Sometimes we need to be scolded. Sometimes we need to be admonished, because being humans, very often, we're either too lazy, too stubborn, or simply too recalcitrant to change. Now remember, the Buddha is a teacher. What he teaches is to educate us. And very often in the Nikayas and the Vinaya, you will see records of the Buddha using very strong words to scold. Now, there is a difference between someone who scolds in anger and someone who is scolding out of compassion. Because the one who is scolding out of compassion is scolding to try and help the person being scolded to be a better person. While the one who is scolding in anger is just doing it because he is angry. And a classic example is in Majjhima Nikaya 38, where the Venerable Sati was documented as telling people that it is consciousness that will transmigrate from death to life, from death to life, from one body to another. And that is not what the Buddha taught. And when the Venerable Sati was told by his fellow venerables that this is wrong, he refuses to accept it. And the Buddha heard of it, and the Buddha called him to his presence. And the Buddha asked him, "What do you teach?" And the Venerable Sati basically said that it is consciousness, like a body or a soul or some concrete thing, which transmigrate from one body to the other. And this, of course, was in complete opposite direction to what the Buddha taught. And here, as he himself, Sati, said, as I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is just this consciousness that runs and wanders on, not another. And the Buddha said, which consciousness, Sati, is that? And then he said, this speaker, this knower, Lord, that is sensitive here and there to the ripening of good and bad actions. And the Buddha used very strong words. And to whom, worthless man, do you understand me? And to whom, worthless man, do you understand me to have taught the Dhamma like that? Haven't I, in many ways, said of dependently co-arisen consciousness? Apart from a requisite condition, there is no coming into play consciousness. You see, strong words. Now, I want to again emphasize the Buddha Dhamma is an education. The Buddha is a teacher. And the teacher is to teach us. He teaches with compassion. He teaches with discipline. That's why you have the Vinaya. For us, we have the 5 precepts. And sometimes, because of our stubborn, recalcitrant nature, like in Sati here, very strong words need to be used to try and improve the situation. So that explains why you will see very often that even a bodhisattva trying to help you occasionally will require a very fierce looking icon. So please, Dhamma family, this is not a religion in which you just pray and offer 3 sticks of incense or a candle. This is not a religion in which you bow and you will get what you want. It is in fact not even a religion. It is an education. And for any education to be useful, we have not only to learn it, but to apply it. If we don't apply it, very soon it is forgotten. It is just like me learning about tangent, sine, cosine, and all that in 6th form mathematics, never to use it, and all completely forgotten. To use the Buddha Dhamma means purity of heart, for good of oneself and other, for compassion, for metta, to help oneself and to help another. That, Dhamma family, is satya. Seeing things as it is, the reality of things as it is, and not as we think it is or want it to be. With that, fellow Dhamma family, I will stop here. It's 9:30. and pass the mic back to Brother Bobby. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Punna, for your very wise sharing. The takeaway is, I get is, take care of the causes, the effects will come, take care of itself. This is what Ajahn Brahm always says, when you take care of the present, the future will take care of itself. There's a question from Brother Leong Yu Ming. When we go to school to study, the knowledge we gain from what we learned or studied can only be applied in our practical life is about 2 to 5%, if I'm not mistaken. So if we cannot apply 100%, is it ignorance? And is what is not put into practice is no different from what is not learned? Thank you, Metta.
Well, Brother Yuming, I don't quite understand the question that you had posed. Maybe Brother Bobby can help me a bit. But a lot of what we learn in school, of course, is academic knowledge. I'm answering what I understand from your question. And as I said, sine, cosine, tangent, maybe to the engineers, they might apply it, but to me, certainly, I did not find any reason to apply my knowledge of integration and differentiation. And so very soon, that which I learned was forgotten. And as I said, it not being applied is almost the same as not having been studied, because I can't remember anything nor make use of it in any aspect of my life. But the Buddha Dharma is different. They are basically the core teachings of the Buddha Dharma, which is the Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, Three Universal Characteristics. I have repeatedly shared, just remember 84,000 Dhamma doors, all have Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, and Three Universal Characteristics. And that is what you and I need to apply. The rest is basically a commentary on the core teachings. Remember, it's the first and second discourse. The Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which taught the middle way, which taught gratitude, which taught the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And then the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, the second discourse, which taught the Three Universal Characteristics. And with these two discourses, we had the 5 new Arahants on top of the Buddha. So we got 6 Aryas at the end of the second discourse. Technically speaking, all Brother Whaley, Sister Eileen, Brother Joseph, Brother Bobby and I need are actually just these 2 discourses. Because these 2 discourses was what gave the first 5 disciples the journey to Arahantship. But of course, we need lots more explanation, and that came along the other many suttas, which are basically expansions of this. For example, dependent origination is a vast expansion of the Four Noble Truths. So dear Brother Leong, I do not know what you learned in school. Certainly some people learned a lot of literature and Shakespeare and all that, which might not really be that applicable. But what we do learn in the Dhamma is certainly very applicable. It is basically psychology, and we are using that every day in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mong. That's all the questions so far. Any closing words?
Any closing words? I had said the main message that I wish to share, but of course, in this audience, we have young people, and young people are, of course, the future. And I would just use Hui Shan as a representative of the young people. To those of you who are young in this audience, you are very, very blessed, because you are learning the Dhamma at a very young age. Most of us, or many of us, come from very traditional Buddhist families. And while my late mother was very devotional, she was a Mahayanist, very devotional, chanting every day. She did not learn what you and I are now discussing. She had a lot of saddha, a lot of faith, and did a lot of dana within her means. She tried her best to do dana. So out of the practice that we always keep repeating, Dana, Sila, Bhavana. Yep, she practiced the Dana aspect. And I still remember while people had birthday parties going to celebrate in restaurants or McDonald's or Kentucky or whatever. When I was small and we had I had my birthday, my mother would take me and my father and we go to the old folks home in Jalan Lok Yew. There's an old folks home, King George V old folks home, and distribute towels, pocket money, toothpaste, toothbrush, etc. So of course, as a child, I didn't quite understand, but it did leave a big impression in my mind. And same, those days, Tongshin Hospital was a pauper's hospital, the same thing. So she did Dana within her means. She kept Sila within her means, but she did not have the third aspect. She chanted purely out of devotion. But you are young and you are now having that opportunity to learn all the three aspects of Dana, Sila, Bhavana. And so I certainly hope that you will take full use of that opportunity available to you, because certainly for us, and Bobby and I were young and in the uni, the resources available to us that time is far, far less than what is available to you all. Make full use of that opportunity. It's really something that you are very blessed with. And by the time you mature in your days, do not be too distracted by the search for money. Because while money is very, very important, nobody understates its importance. Your spiritual pursuit is equally important. And here I congratulate Brother Bobby, because you had contributed truly to the Sasana in your family. Thank you.